another way we can try to understand the quantity theory of money is to better understand the velocity of money. And so velocity here in economics, when we're thinking about it with money, is really the rate that money changes hands. And so we've got kind of a self-evident identity here that we want to walk through and make sure everyone's on the same page, kind of thinking through what these components are. So the first one here is M, and M here we're talking about the quantity of money that we've previously thought about. So we'll just kind of list all these out, the quantity of money here. And so this would be the quantity of money that is in the society as determined by the central bank, or in America, the Federal Reserve. And then we have V here, which is the velocity of money. And this is kind of the rate that the money changes hands, the velocity of money here. On the right-hand side of the equation, we have price and we have output. So here we've got price level. Generically speaking, we've got P as kind of standing in for like the CPI or the GDP deflator, the level of prices that we've previously talked about. So we've got price level here. And then Y here we've got, this is GDP, and this is a particular, this is kind of the quantity GDP. This is real GDP, real output in the economy. And so over here, if we take real output and price level, right, together, this would be, if we multiply those together, this would be nominal output here. And I make that distinction because we're going to kind of discuss that here in a minute. So what are we talking about here with the velocity of money? Well, we're really saying how often does it change hands? So all goods and all purchases have, right, what do they have? They have a buyer and they have a seller. And that, so if you're going to purchase something, you are going to give your money to someone else. And then what is that company going to do? Well, they're likely going to pay their employees, and they have to buy other things themselves, right? And so they're going to pay money to their employees. It's a bit of that cycle that we've talked about before in kind of firms and households, and how the kind of the circular flow of money throughout the economy. And so what we're really trying to get a feel for is, well, what is actually happening when the quantity of money increases? And I can tell you, and you've probably seen a few different charts of this before, I can tell you that the velocity of money over time has not really changed. This is the rate at which money changes hands has not really changed all that much. And so then what we want to kind of understand is, okay, well, what's actually happening when the quantity of money increases? If velocity is basically constant, what happens when the quantity of money increases? So we can kind of think about this in a few different ways, but what I really want to focus in on is here. I want to focus in on our real output, because we know that there's something in particular, and that is that real values are relative. I'll put real values are relative. And why do I say that? Well, when we talk about real output, what are we talking about? When we do real output, we are taking into account a base year of price levels, right? So when it's real output, we're looking at the quantity of goods, right? And I'll say in period 1 times the price of goods in our base year. And then we sum up, right? What do? We sum up all of those quantities and prices, with the prices being in the constant base year. And so what we're really doing is we're checking on how much is quantity changing, right? Because we're holding the prices constant. So if prices change, then the opportunity cost of two goods would remain the same. In essence, right, it's just that these quantities are compared. This is basically what we say is, this is kind of another way of talking about money, and I'll say monetary neutrality. And monetary neutrality is really just saying that the change in the money supply does not change real variables. And let me go ahead and write that out here real quick. So we'll say the change in the money supply, does not change real values. And that's just because of this, exactly what we were talking about. If there's a change in the money supply, right, It does not change real values because the change in the money supply would change prices, as we previously talked. It would change price levels, as we previously talked about. But if we're holding that constant for real values, then it's just really quantity that we're really comparing there. We're just comparing the quantities of goods to themselves. And so you can think about what's the real value versus the nominal value here. But this idea of monetary neutrality is really key here, because what is actually happening? Well, so thus, if the money supply increases, let's say that the money supply increases, the Federal Reserve increases the money supply, and the velocity of money basically has remained the same, as we've talked about, and real output would not be real output would not be affected by that change in the money supply, and so this is really kind of stays the same. Well, then that means that for this equation to balance, when the money supply increases, that means that the price level must increase as well, right? It must increase kind of one for one as well, as we kind of think about that. So here, when we're thinking about the velocity of money, it's really that if the money supply increases and velocity is constant, and the real output is unaffected, then the price level in the economy must be what balances the equation. And so again, it's just another way of thinking about the quantity theory of money here, that really, as the quantity of money increases, the price level must also increase as well, because the relative quantities in our comparison wouldn't change. And we know that the velocity, the changing of money from hand to hand, has not changed all that much as far as a rate. And so it's really within money, the quantity of money, and the price that this equation would balance.